Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit. Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Stamps.com. Why go to the post office? Use Stamps.com instead. For a no-risk trial and $110 bonus offer, use promo code TWIST. And by GoToMeeting. Sign up for GoToMeeting using the promo code START to begin your free trial.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. It's This Week in Startups. Today on the program, we have 3Taps, a very innovative startup that is collecting information, facts, if you will, from different data sources, including one you may have heard of, Craigslist. And they are in a massive, important legal battle over who owns the facts on Craigslist and who owns the facts just generally on the internet. It's a fascinating episode about, yes?
This could be one of the biggest rulings in internet-related startup.
If it goes that far.
If it goes, but as
yeah,
far
but
as
thanks for
startups,
this is the cold open.
I'm just saying.
Stick with us.
This could be very important.
It's very important. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Startups. It's a very important episode, as Tyler very astutely but rudely interrupted the cold open. Cold open is supposed to be like 30 seconds, get people excited.
I'm just saying.
And you're just so excited about this issue.
I am.
You're passionate about it, in
You
fact.
could say that.
Okay.
I think every startup person, once they figure out what this is about, will be.
Right. And
this could affect a lot of startups.
It's an issue that's been around a long time, and it flares up. Mm-hmm. Who owns the facts in the world?
Yes.
And can you own a fact, or can you own a community, and can people access your facts, and whose facts are they really? And it affects Twitter, it affects Google, it affects Facebook. It's really at the core of society in a way, of who owns the information.
Every time you
society.
hear the word big data.
Of course, yeah. It's a big part of it. And so we're going to have Greg Kidd on from 3Taps in a moment and talk about the whole brouhaha going on and his position. And it's I don't want anybody to rush to any snap judgments because I don't actually have a fully thought out opinion on this. I have some concepts about it, but I want to reserve judgment and hear from.
It could go either way. That's the thing. It's not
there's
entirely
reasonable. I think there's reasonable arguments on both sides here, and that's what I want to try to get to.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily have the answer, and that's why I love hosting the program.
I've got the answer on this one.
Okay, Todd. See, this is the problem. There are people in society, I just tweeted about this today, who just think they have the answer to everything.
Yeah.
I want you to...
And it's not you.
Not me.
No. Really? Jake Al doesn't have the answer this time?
I have the answer most of the time, but I
Okay.
try to keep my mind open.
Usually I'm the open one.
No, anyway, listen. The one thing you should be open to is GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting is the solution for hosting online meetings. Mac, PC, iPad, all of these things work beautifully with their free app. Go download them now. And HD Faces is just buttery and awesome and delicious. I love HD Faces. That's why I use it here on the program today. We're going to be having our guest Greg Kidd over GoToMeeting. Beautiful, HD, clean. GoToMeeting and get a free 30-day trial. Use the promo code START. Please use the promo code START. And, these guys have been supporting This Week in Startups for, 2 or 3 years now. And I really appreciate Citrix for, one, making a great product that I use all the time. Literally, I use it, I wouldn't say every day, but multiple times a week. And then sometimes when I'm really busy as an angel investor, it is multiple times in one day, or we're doing the launch festival. I might use it multiple times. It's at least 5 to 15 times a week, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years or more. I've used GoToMeeting from Citrix, and I love it. It always works. My meetings always start on time. And then sometimes people will try to use some other solutions, and they never work, and it's never starting on time. I love the beauty of one click, and everybody on every platform is in a private, secure network. The GoToMeeting private, secure, high-speed network makes these meetings go flawlessly. Not some open network of, maybe it's up and running, but it's a free service, so there's nobody to call, and et cetera. It's a very modest fee to use GoToMeeting on an unlimited basis, and I do. And you can go there and use the promo code START. You use it a lot, Tyler.
I do.
For your business,
You have to.
All right. Everybody thank at GoToMeeting. Everybody use at GoToMeeting. Everybody use the promo code START when you do sign up. Thank you at GoToMeeting. It's awesome. Today, my guest is Greg Kidd of 3 Taps. He founded 3 Taps in 2009. Previously, he had founded the company Dispatch Management Services in 1991, and a kid named Jack Dorsey worked there for a little bit when he was at NYU. Greg is at Greg Kidd, Kidd, like Jason Kidd, now playing for the New York Knicks, on Twitter. And he's a smart cat. He's was a consultant to Twitter back in the 2008 timeframe, and has been a consultant to Square since 2009. Long way of saying, guy's the real deal and legit. Welcome to the program, Greg Kidd.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
It's a pleasure. Just get that microphone right up in there so we don't miss any of those comments you make. Tell us, what is 3 Taps? I have it up here on my screen, but give me the 30,000 foot view. What are you doing?
3 Taps is a service that collects exchange postings. Those are the types of things you see on Craigslist for selling a car, finding an apartment, finding a personals ad. And it puts all of those from all the different services in a data commons and lets developers like PadMapper build applications on top of that data.
Got it. And so you're going out, and would the proper term be scraping or indexing, or is it multiple different ways to collect this information? How is the information collected?
Well, there's 3 ways to get it. People could either push it to us with an API, or let us pull it with an API. There are technologies that are push and pull. Or else you can do one of the methods. People call it different things. They call it scraping, they call it crawling, indexing, but all of those relate to finding it on the public internet and taking a copy of the information or some subset of the information and indexing it so that it's accessible by third parties like PadMapper and other sites that want to build on top of that data.
And you keep bringing up PadMapper, which I have some friends. A friend showed it to me, a year or 2 ago, and was like, "This is the greatest thing ever. You can actually type in your zip code here."
I found my apartment through this.
Okay, you found your apartment through. I just typed in 232, which is 90232, which of course is the zip code here in lovely Culver City. And I say I'm looking for something that's rent between $800 and $2,100, and I need to have 16 bedrooms. No, I'll say 2 bedrooms. And boom, now I start seeing apartments. I can pick the number of baths, full leases, and I can get an email alert. But of course, this data is primarily from Craigslist, correct?
Well, in the rental market, there's quite a few different sources. In some cities in America, Craigslist is the dominant provider, but in others, it's more balanced. But Craigslist is a healthy dose of apartment ads in most major metropolitan areas in the United States.
So PadMapper, for all intents and purposes, has built a beautiful user interface, a gorgeous service that is providing true value to people, but it's using the data which was originally posted at sites like Craigslist, correct?
Craigslist or Rent.com or Apartments.com or Backpage, and any site that is putting that information out there in public.
Right. And when you click on the link on PadMapper, you will either go to a permalink page like this one or to the original one?
Yeah, it depends on the different services. But in the case of Craigslist, it just takes you back to the original Craigslist posting in a frame so that you can view the original content.
Got it. And that's part of the terms of service. Like, here we go. Here's a perfect example, a Craigslist ad. So for Craigslist, they're not necessarily losing anything because the person is going to ultimately, when they click on it, wind up on Craigslist, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it still is directing traffic back to Craigslist. And again, Craigslist doesn't get paid for clicks; it gets paid for posting the ads. So there's not a direct competition for that revenue, or even for those eyeballs.
Now,
if anything, you could say that you're adding more potential views.
Potentially, right?
Yeah.
There's that argument there. So we're sort of operating on what I wanted to do is sort of set the stage for exactly how people are using the data. There are other ways people are using this data, I suppose?
There have been, although a lot of them have been shut down of late with cease and desist orders from Craigslist.
Okay, so Craigslist is taking a hardline stance on this. What is, and I know you don't speak for them, obviously, you're the person on the other side here, but in a nutshell, what is their argument?
Well, Craigslist, and again, I can't really speak for them, but acting as if they own the data and that the only place they want you to see the data is on their website. Although having said that, they've allowed their site to be crawled by about 14 or 15 other search engines, so that data is also discoverable on those public search engines as well.
Right. And so the content, they claim that they have absolutely no ownership of the content, and they have no responsibility of that content as well, correct?
Well, they accept that they didn't create it. They accept that they're not responsible for it. They even accept that they don't have a exclusive license over it. They gave that up because that was untenable. But it has not stopped them pursuing other people for having that same content, regardless of whether they got it from Craigslist or like us, got it from somewhere other than Craigslist.
Right, and here is the, if you go to the Craigslist terms of service, just type Craigslist terms of service, really what Craigslist is objecting to here is, and they say it in kind of plain English in their terms of service, and I'll have you respond to it. Let's see. Postings. Oh, it's section 5. Hold on one second while I pull up section 5 here. But essentially what they're saying is they're trying to protect the community. To maintain the integrity and functionality of Craigslist for its users, access to Craigslist and/or activities related to Craigslist that are harmful to, inconsistent with, or disruptive of Craigslist and/or its users' beneficial use and enjoyment of Craigslist, especially when also prohibited, for example, without limitation. Collection of the Craigslist users' information. You guys do collect information on the users there?
No, we do not.
So obviously you don't have access to IP and email addresses, but you could take the telephone number if they posted it in a post, correct?
Well, if it's in the posting, yes, we could. But Craigslist generally encourages people not to put that information out there.
And then here, this is the sort of key. Any copying, aggregation, display, distribution, performance, or derivative use of Craigslist or any content posted on Craigslist, whether done directly or through intermediaries, including but not limited to spiders, robots, crawlers, scrapers, framing, iframes, RSS, are prohibitive. And then they say they have limited access to search engines when they obey the robots.txt. So,
but this is an agreement between Craigslist and the user who posts it.
All users who use Craigslist, right?
Right.
Anybody
but
who
he's not
logs into
using
the
Craigslist.
service. Right. So they're upset, I guess, that you're breaking this terms of service. Your position is this is an overreaching terms of service, correct?
Well, it's overreaching, and we didn't get the data from them anyway, so we're never quite clear why the terms of service applied to us. The data we found, which our Craigslist posting, is available on the public internet on public search engines.
So you can go search Google and pull the cached version of the page and get the information there.
That's correct. You can either get the cached version or you can get a more current version, but they've already put that information out there on a variety of search engines, so the information is all discoverable outside of Craigslist itself.
But when I look at Craigslist and when I look at Google and I do a search, like let's say I do site:/Craigslist.org, it gives me, it doesn't actually give me the full, unless I guess I would go to the cached version, it wouldn't actually give me the exact listing, would it? So are there other search engines that pull it all down?
Well, Google, just like PadMapper, gives you a summary view. Same thing with PadMapper. We don't have the entire version. We index the important facts and make that addressable. To get to the full view, you have to look underneath.
Got it. So you can basically, from the abstract, collect some data.
Well, or you can look at the full content and then pull out. So for instance, PadMapper focuses on 4 facts: the location, the price, the number of bedrooms, and the number of bathrooms, all of which we're pretty sure constitute factual information for which there is no copyright in this country. And public facts are generally widely acknowledged to be public property and have strong First Amendment protection.
Yeah, so explain that to me and to the audience. Facts, in and of themselves, statistics and facts cannot be copyrighted.
Correct.
So if I were to make an almanac of the weather every day of the year, and I were to take the temperature in my backyard, and I had a collection of this, you could essentially copy those facts, and you'd be well within your rights.
That's correct. And this was decided by the Supreme Court definitively in a unanimous decision regarding, for instance, phone numbers. In a case, Rural versus Feist, there was a question as to whether you could copy phone numbers. And really, if you didn't copy them exactly, they would simply be wrong numbers. And so the court threw out the idea that simply the sweat of the brow, that somebody went through a lot of work to put them all in a list, gave them some copyright-like protection, and said that's basically a bogus concept, that facts are just facts. They're not creative expression, they're descriptive information, and as such are outside of the bounds of what copyright law was intended to cover.
And Google uses that same point with Wikipedia when they extract facts and make it surfaceable. Or
Well, with the
searchable.
DBpedia, I guess, which was, but in the case of
Right, when you-
Wikipedia,
when-
it's an open source by default.
Right, but when
so
you do
there
a,
is,
when you do a search for Britney Spears' birthday,
Yes.
they give you the answer now.
right, but the fact is that information is offered up, and in fact, the Wikimedia Foundation encourages that use. Here you have Craigslist
Sure.
not encouraging this use,
Sure.
and in fact saying, and I think part of Craig's argument, because I've talked to him about it before, is that he doesn't want the information from the community misappropriated to ruin the community. So if people are talking about things, let's say in the chat rooms, or don't want it to be widely amplified outside of Craigslist, they feel like this is infringing. Of course, that's an argument for like the community sort of side of Craigslist, but on the factual side of Craigslist, I guess that argument breaks down, does it not, Greg?
Well, and I can't think of a wider dissemination than giving it all to Google so that it could be basically Googled from any site or any computer in the world.
So do you think Craigslist is being hypocritical then in giving it to Google because Google is the number one referrer of traffic on the internet, and then getting upset when perhaps the balance of favor, say PadMapper, falls in the other direction?
Well, it's not really a question of hypocrisy. Once Craigslist puts that out there in public, and it's the same thing for Twitter, and full disclosure, I'm a first-round investor in Twitter. Once you put something out in public, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Anything in public, whether it's Google or anyone else, it's public. There are no longer any privacy or confidentiality claims unless that data was mistakenly put out there. But once you, with intention, put factual information in the public domain, i.e. make it discoverable in a public place, whether it's a Google search engine or even just Craigslist serving that up on its own servers, but from an accessible point on a public network, that information is public. And the law is pretty clear about that.
So you feel if any tweets out there, I should be able to make a secondary service New York Knicks players and the facts in their tweets?
Well, so this question, tweets can have copyright, okay? But even with copyright, there's concepts of fair use and implied license. And so when somebody makes a public tweet, the question was there expectation that the tweet was going to be shown in a private place? And it's fairly well acknowledged that if you have a public account on Twitter and you tweet, it's going to be seen by people publicly. So you can't make a claim of privacy about something that you tweeted about publicly.
Unless your
Similarly,
account's set to private.
Right.
Yeah, I
Similarly,
think if
you
your
put
account was set to private, you could make that argument.
Yeah.
If you make the account set to private, you can make that argument. But if you there is no concept of a private account for Craigslist. It is put out there in a very public place. If you put an ad out for a toaster oven in Los Angeles, anyone in the world can see that ad. There is no discriminatory restraint on who can see that ad.
And so let me ask you, why there's a million different businesses you could run. You've been very successful. If you're a first-round investor in Twitter, given the secondary market for Twitter, you probably don't ever have to work again unless you invested less than $100 in Twitter, which I would find highly unlikely. Why is this so important to Greg Kidd? Why is this worth going to the mat for? Because this is a big undertaking.
And it's something that this has been going on in the past, where there's been other things in the past that were like PadMapper that Craigslist would say, do
well,
a cease and desist.
Google, in fact, with their image search,
Right,
and
but those people normally kowtow, for lack of a better word, and just kind of shut it down.
PadMapper does not have the ability. VCs do not have the ability to fight this. It takes
Right.
an individual with.
And so this is a very unique case where
Right.
somebody's actually standing up to it and wants to go to the mat on it.
Right. So can you answer the question?
I just want people to know for context
Right.
that normally this is not what happens.
Okay. It is. That's right, Tyler. It's not what happens. So, Greg, as I beautifully stated in my question, and then Tyler,
Just for emphasis.
just for emphasis, why is this so important to Greg Kidd? Why are you spending what will be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on legal bills to fight this?
Well, I've had the pleasure in my life of always being involved in exchange marketplaces. It started out with bike messengers, where we aggregated all the bike messenger deliveries in one city from all the customers for all the couriers, and that model spread throughout the world and became the largest on-demand dispatch company. And I met some great both bike messengers as coders from doing that. And I think you mentioned Jack Dorsey was one of the folks that hacked into my system and learned along with us. And we really enjoy seeing exchange marketplaces work efficiently. And efficiently to us means best execution, means willing buyers and willing sellers can always find the best match for whatever they have on offer.
Fluidity.
And liquidity. It's the grand liquidity scheme. And we never like to see discriminatory access. We never like to see anybody basically locked out of seeing all the supply or all the demand. And so what we took in terms of a lesson from the bike messengers and learning a little bit about 140 characters and paging allowed us for Twitter to come up with what I think you could call the democratization of media, that anybody could follow anybody else who had something to say. And instead of just putting out bike messenger deliveries, it was amazing to see what happened when for those 140 characters, we just let anybody say and anybody follow anything. And that's been an amazing journey. And then, so if you think of Twitter as the democratization of media, then Square was the democratization of payments. Everybody has lots of different ways to make a payment, but there are precious few ways to take a payment electronically, and basically allowing everyone to take that payment means a democratization of payments, just like Twitter was a democratization of media.
Okay.
Now, Three Caps was actually a Jack Dorsey idea as well, and it was just about democratizing exchanges, letting every seeker see every provider. And there's no way to do that unless you basically make all the supply and all the demand from all the different sources available in one pot, so that a new generation of developers like Eric at PadMapper or the folks at Live Lovely can build sites that you could never build if you're only going for one source at a time.
All right, when we get back, I want to find out how you're making money from this project, and maybe talk a little bit about how Twitter has, in fact, restricted access to their data and how that relates, because what you're saying sounds great, but we also see on the other side, and you're a Twitter investor and we're an advisor, that they've been locking down access when we get back from this commercial break. Hey, let me tell you guys about Stamps.com. As you guys know, the show is sold. Did you know the show's sold out through January? The ads? Jason DeMont.
I just kind of assumed that.
Yeah, well, it's been selling out like crazy. And the reason is because we only allow the best providers on the show. Stamps.com is one of those. I've used Stamps.com.
But it's a damn good show.
It is, technically.
And Jason's kicking butt.
Well, we're doing okay with the show, yes. But putting that aside, 100,000 people downloading every episode, great episodes on great topics like this that are important to the industry. The fact is, we pick great partners, and they stick with us for years and years. And Stamps.com, I'm so happy to have them as part of the family, because going to the post office is a complete waste of time, and you've got better things to do. And if you didn't know, the post office provides great service. Do a couple searches that compare the post office to other overnight or second day or third day options, and man, you're going to look at the pricing and go, oh my God, what a great deal. Priority Express, Media Mail, Bulk Mail, all these things are incredible products and services from the U.S. Post Office.
They've reached scale.
They've reached scale a long time ago. And speaking of scales, when you sign up for Stamps.com, you will get a free digital scale, so you don't put too many stamps on all those packages. What a waste of money that is. And I used to do that all the time. But yeah, I put a couple extra dollars stamp on there. You don't have to do that. You don't have to waste money anymore. And you get up to $55 in free postage. Go to the website, click on the microphone in the top right, and use the code TWIST, TWIST, This Week in Startups. Go to Stamps.com, use TWIST. You're going to love the product. I've been using it for years. It's a fantastic product. It's easy, it's affordable, and it's just buttery, delicious, awesome. Spread it right there on your bagel. Stamps.com is just delicious. I love those things that save time and money and provide better service, and this is one of them. It just wins on all levels. Thank you at Stamps.com on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, go thank at Stamps.com. So, Greg, you're talking a good game here. I like the facts. I agree with you. Facts shouldn't be copyrighted. But then you start bringing up Twitter as your defense, And Twitter actually has been very closed of late, shutting down tons of developers. Are you not being a little hypocritical now, saying that Twitter is just a great example of openness and that they spread the way? I tend to think that Twitter is a terrible example right now.
I think I know how.
Let him answer the question,
I think
Tyler.
I know what he's going to say.
You keep interrupting. Let Greg answer.
This is good.
All right, Greg.
I have the same question, but
go ahead, Greg. Are you being a hypocrite, Greg? In short.
Well, first of all, I'm just an investor there, so I certainly don't agree with everything they're doing.
Oh, you don't agree?
I don't agree with everything they're doing.
If you were running it, how would you run it? How would you? What would your data policy be?
Well, again, anybody who's running an API, and let's just remember, Craigslist has no API at all,
right,
can set whatever limits they want. Because if people don't like the API, they always have the ability to go out in the world I live in and crawl, index, and scrape. So in life, there's always a trade-off between using someone's API and gathering the data directly in the form and with the timeliness that you want. Because there's no guarantee that anybody's API is ever going to give you what you want. So for instance, Google doesn't rely on APIs. I mean, people could give Google all the APIs they want. Google wants to scrape because they want to organize the internet and the data the way they want to see it.
And so, more importantly, they also allow for you to tell them if you don't want them to scrape it.
Yeah, you could say Google no index.
This is a huge point
in
this case.
Which Twitter does. Twitter doesn't let their tweets be indexed.
But yet Craigslist does.
Correct.
This is a huge point in this.
Is it?
Oh, it is.
Greg?
Yep, and we're going to come back to it. So the first thing just on Twitter and its API, there's a big thing about restricting access versus suing people for the data. So you can make it harder and say, hey, you got to scrape, but there's no illusion at Twitter. Twitter's not going around and suing people for using tweets. They're just basically restricting the access. And so there's a big difference between making it easier or harder to get data in a timely fashion. So for instance, Twitter's first sale was to Google and to Bing to basically sell the API. Those companies were indexing anyways, but Google and Bing bought a higher level of service from Twitter. And we'd love it if Craigslist had something like that as well, saying, here's the price for our API. If you don't like it, go get it the way everybody else gets it by indexing it on the public internet.
And so I guess the issue there is, do you provide reasonable access? And I guess for internet companies to not have an API, Craigslist is just looking phenomenally old school in not having an API. And really, developers are so entitled these days that they just expect an API. And if there's not one, they're going to go get that data however they can.
Yeah, well, and I'm not. It's Craigslist's own decision to have an API or not, but it is a secondary issue to think that simply because you don't have an API and you have factual information that you've put on the internet, that somehow you have a property right over information which is factual information or is fair use information, fair use of copyrighted information. Especially when, let's just remember three things that in our case, Craigslist did not create the data, they do not have an exclusive license to the data, and we didn't get the data from them anyways. We're finding it from other sources which have already indexed it, like Google, like Bing, like other search engines that are out there.
And why doesn't Craigslist blow out the frame? Like, technically speaking, they could blow out the frame here on PadMapper. Why don't they do that? Do you think?
Well, they could. I mean, there's an open question as to whether framing is allowable or not, and that's kind of like their Russians versus PadMapper's Russians and whose Russians are better. So framing is an ongoing issue of policy etiquette. It's just like, I think that there was a question there about the robot.txt, is whether you want your information indexed or not. And so robot.txt is obviously not a law, it's a convention. Craigslist is absolutely happy to have the public search engines index it, but if somebody's public search engine gets a little bit too close to being competitive with them, then they get a bit uncomfortable and they might pull the rug out from under that public search engine that looks a little too much like a search engine that might compete with their search engine.
Have you done any analysis of the market? And I know that you're pulling from a lot of different sources. What percentage in an average market, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, let's take those sort of major cities, what percentage of real estate is Craigslist or jobs is Craigslist?
Well, I can talk generally in the overall numbers, and these numbers are in the filing. Craigslist is taking in about 1.5 million new postings a day. The number 2 in the market, in our opinion, is Backpage, which is taking in about 100,000 a day, and eBay Classifieds is doing about 20,000 a day. So the distant 4th and 5th would be possibly Oodle and a company that's mostly overseas called OLX, and they have smaller market shares still. So, at an overall market basis for general classified postings, it's a very dominant position for Craigslist.
What about the images? I see that the images are being syndicated as well on PadMapper. I guess because you're using smaller images, it's sort of the Google Images defense. Fair use, small percentage of the original.
Well, there's that, but also we don't actually take the images ourselves. We're just collecting links to the images. So
so it's up to PadMapper or the other person to then take on that risk of the images themselves and displaying them.
Well, again, they don't have the images either. They're just pointing toward the images at the original site. Same thing that Google does.
Right, but if they embed them in their experience, then they are de facto using them.
Yes, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by embed. So generally, the question of like a Pinterest and whatnot is whether you have a copy of the original picture versus not having a copy of the original picture.
Well, it's sort of even worse if you pull the image from their servers and then put it into your experience. So I guess, but I'm trying to find an example here of a Craigslist. It seems like for the other services, Apartment Finder and the other ones, they do it. But for Craigslist, has pics, but not shown here for now is the notation on PadMapper. So I have a feeling that they're not showing those images because of concerns.
You're getting, this is from your experience with like
blogs and everything,
stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like you'd have car manufacturers say you can't point to our photos.
Image use seems to be. I mean, I'm curious of Greg's take on image use and percentage of image and the source of it. I mean, that seems to be another hot potato that flares up only once in a blue moon. What do you think? What's going on with images?
Well, I mean, if you go to any of the major car sites, and when GM compares its pickup truck to Ford and its pickup truck to Chrysler, they're not going around to Chrysler and asking for permission to show a picture of their truck versus the other truck versus the other truck. It's the same thing with comparison sites. Comparison sites on the internet are not based on asking for permission. If you go to, let's not just talk about pictures, let's just talk about prices and schedules. I mean, there would be no Orbitz, there would be no Kayak if there wasn't a company like ITA, which is like the 3TAPS of the travel industry, collecting all those schedules, those prices, that seat availability, and making it available so that a site like Orbitz or Kayak could work. You couldn't make real-time comparisons about supply and demand and prices if somebody didn't crunch the numbers in advance. You can't go scrape these sites on the fly and have a user experience that works. And so in other industries, there's a long-standing practice of comparing prices, supply, and demand. And, my background's at the Federal Reserve. That's how markets work. The concept that that's intellectual property, when it's really just transparency of price, supply, and demand, and that's how markets work, is a real stretch. And it's something that could, if it continues to go this way, could basically break the internet, where you have to have permission to compare prices and compare supply and demand between different sources of goods and services.
Let's talk about Craigslist tactics. They're going after the individual developers, kind of scary for people like PadMap. Excuse me. They went after Mashery, right? You can't provide your service through Mashery anymore. They're basically going scorched earth on you guys. Talk about their tactics a little bit.
Well, I think that would be their tactics. They're not talking, they're just suing. And what more would you like me to say about that? That's their side of the story, so I can't speak for them.
And how far are you willing to take this?
Well, we filed the case. We'll take it as far as we can take it. We'd like to have a court of law speak on these issues of what's a fact, what's fair use, what's implied license for this data. What we really like is, and I'm not in the business of being sued or suing people, we just like Craigslist to stop suing people and just compete in the marketplace. And they've got a dominant position in onboarding these postings. Nobody is contesting that for any of the vendors that we're working with, and we're certainly not contesting that. We just think that the business of onboarding the postings and charging for it is entirely different from the search and downstream interaction. I mean, Google isn't in the business of content creation. They're in the business of search. And, 3TAPS would like to be in the same business as ITA. We're in the business of providing data so that people can make side-by-side comparisons of goods and services that are on the public internet.
If Craigslist came to you today and said, we're fine with this, you just have to pay us $100,000 a month, would you pay $1 million a year for access to the data?
Well, again, there's two methods of access. So you can't ask, I mean, you can't have a Brooklyn Bridge approach and say, well, you got to pay me for the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm like, well, dude, you don't own the Brooklyn Bridge. And so, they don't have yet and have not established that they have not created these postings. They don't have an exclusive license, and they've already given them out and put them in the public domain. So they can ask for a price on the API, and if that's a reasonable price, we will surely pay it. But if it's like an unreasonable price, they charge like, the moon, then there's another way to get the data that is perfectly acceptable, which is the same way that Google and other search engines get it, and we're just one more search engine. The fact is, we search exchange postings, Google search web pages, and Twitter searches tweets. They're just different ways of searching for different things.
Why don't you create a search engine then to show have you considered this, to make the point so vividly, like here is a search engine of all the posts, we're just a search engine?
That's what we did. That's what we got sued for. That's what Craigers was, and that's what Craigslist has sued us over.
Oh, that was your service, Craigers?
You know what it's like, Jason?
Yeah.
Hold on, Tyler. What is it like?
It's like a valet service at a public parking lot.
I think we have new... It's like a valet at a public parking lot. And I think what you mean by this is, it's the public's parking lot, but if you want to, you can pay a little extra to have the valet use it.
Right.
And so if you want that extra level of service, you can.
Sure. And he's saying if the price was reasonable, I would pay the valet.
Right. So the valet is $100 and parking's free.
I'm within my rights to just park my car if I freaking want to.
Right.
You can't.
Like when you go to a hotel and you pull up,
right?
And they're like, "Oh, we'll valet it for you." Like, do you have public parking? They're like, "Well," and then you finally get from them that they do.
Right.
Do you have free parking?
Sure.
Interesting.
Would you agree with this, Greg?
Yes, I would. I mean, that's a perfectly accurate description. They don't have to do this. It's just a question of, whether they'd like to or not, and nobody has to buy the API. It's the same thing whether it's Twitter or Yelp or anybody that has user-generated content, and how much and how easily they want to make it available to the outside world. They just can't confuse whether being the company that onboards it gives them some sort of right as if they created it and as if it's some sort of Mozart or rocket fuel kind of intellectual property, when it's really just offers by people to sell and buy things. That's not what copyright law was created for. If you go back and you look at the original law or the Constitution, it wasn't to create a property right out of something like classified ads.
And so you're suing them, or countersuing them, I guess, in federal court in California, San Francisco. When do you think this would go to a trial?
Well, it's a long ways from a trial, so there's a bunch of processes, I understand. And again, to be clear here, we're not interested in litigation. We were sued. We had to basically answer. We answered the intellectual property claims and stated that they're baseless. And we went on to state that if you're going to make baseless intellectual property claims, that's going to be part of an anti-competition claim. And it's basically to ask them to just lay off and stop suing people. The next step is they get a chance to ask the judge to dismiss this if they think it's all just a bunch of hokum. But if that does not happen, and we do not believe that will happen, then the parties can settle at any time, and we're happy to sit down and just talk. We're not in the business of litigating. You go through discovery to find out whether the things that we've asserted in our papers are true as they're stated. And if they're true as
and you
stated,
think that what they're doing is frivolous, don't you? The legal action they're taking. This is without merit.
I think it's completely without merit. I mean, the copyright law in this country, if you go back and look at the intent, is absolutely clear. And the concept of suing people for something that you don't have exclusive control over is like a Brooklyn Bridge, offense. And it's definitely frivolous and sham litigation.
And wonder if they lose this, if it is in fact, them just using the legal system to bully people, then with their considerable resources. I wonder if they would be responsible for some sort of claim against them. What have your lawyers told you?
Well, I mean, you can read the claim themselves, but that's exactly how anti-competition law works. If they're doing anti-competitive things, if they're basically making a bogus claim to control competition in a way that is not based on anything that is viable in their intellectual property claims, then it's part of an anti-competition claim.
And what
Again,
about
that's really not the purpose here. The purpose here is just to let people like PadMapper innovate. I mean, it's to keep this out of the courts.
Why do you think Craigslist doesn't want people innovating around specifically their data? I mean, obviously they don't mind you innovating around other people's data. They're not anti-innovation in that way. They just don't want people innovating around the resource and the community they've built. Why don't they want that? Are they scared that they're going to lose their business eventually? Is that the fear?
Well, again, and I can't speak for Craigslist. I mean, you can look at what Craig Newmark said on Quora, which he said he had no problem with people building on top of Craigslist data. They just didn't like a load on their servers. And so, we obviously put no load on their server. If anything, we reduced the load on their server because we're not getting the data from them. But, there could be a difference of opinion between the founders or a lack of communication. It's really hard to know. I can tell you that, in my history of working with other firms, Craigslist does very well at what they do. And it's always a risky business trying to keep up with the Joneses. And so there's a lot of different innovation out there. Not every innovation works. And they may like things just the way they are. But liking things just the way they are and suing people that are going to be trying to innovate and do things with this data that's in the public domain is, from where I sit, that's just not on. There's, if you look at what Airbnb did in their one segment where they added all sorts of services that were not available through Craigslist, and you could imagine that happening for the job segment, the apartments, for goods for sale, for services. There's a tremendous amount of economic activity that's sitting under the thumb of a Craigslist format for exchanges that really hasn't changed in 10 years.
Do you do any data normalization, or I should say human normalization of the data? So if you're going through and making sure that, when they put 2,500, they're not talking about square feet, they're talking about dollars, and they left out a dollar symbol. Is somebody in Manila checking the facts, or on a Mechanical Turk checking them and scanning them to do that polish?
We do all sorts of normalization, but we don't have the time or resources to do any of that mechanical turking. But what we do is normalization between sources, because we're not just working with Craigslist data.
Right.
A big part, but we've got to normalize between the different segments and whatnot. And we need to normalize geographically as well, because Craigslist has a very crude way of organizing information geographically. Probably one of the biggest benefits that we bring is not just the ability to search across different exchange sites, but through this database that we create in the indexing is you can search for things across every location as well.
This is going to be, I get the sense you're not backing down and that this is going to be a lot of resources. But you're using Skadden Arps, which is the largest law firm in the world. You're taking this very seriously, correct?
Well, really, I mean, we could spend all our time just being on defense, but Craigslist just keeps suing folks. So unless we actually bump it up from being on defense all the time and actually draw a line in the sand and say, look, you got to stop suing people and just and to do that is an anti-competition claim, and our understanding is Skadden Arps and Alan Ruby are the best in the business, and so
Yeah, when I saw that Alan Ruby and Skadden Arps, I just thought this is not a kid fighting against Craigslist. I mean, this is serious business now when it's Skadden Arps versus Perkins Coie. Like, this is serious law firms and in litigation. And do you have any other constituents? Because this is not the first time Craigslist has been in a beef with people. Are there other constituents who want to join in sort of supporting your side, maybe helping with the legal bills?
Well, the last thing I'm looking to do is just basically have a big gang up and just get more and more people in something that looks like a big messy class action suit. There's a bunch of other folks that understand the issues here, and I'll be upfront. I make my own angel investments. I've made a couple of maybe a score of investments of other firms, other VCs, other angels in the community that are affected by the outcome of this. And so what's important here is that the issues get clearly articulated. It's not a question of trying to out gorilla the gorilla. It's not going to happen. They're the gorilla. We're the little guy. We get a couple more little guys, but it ain't going to be an even fight on the resource issue. It's got to be an even fight, or a real fight on the intellectual property and the anti-competition issues that are mentioned in the filing.
What happens if each side wins going forward?
Oh, what do you think it means for the internet?
Right.
Well, I don't think Craigslist can win. I think what they can do is they can bully people to stop, right? So I don't think if this goes to the mat, Craigslist wins. So it just requires somebody with a deep enough pocket to fight it all the way. So,
but I don't mean.
And I think Craigslist now has lost. There's an interesting hack that
Craigslist does win.
Craigslist can't win.
Assuming they do.
Win the lawsuit?
Yes. What would happen? What does that mean for the users in the
Well,
internet?
it would just, I mean, at that point, I think you'd have people like Google and other people would get sort of concerned about this issue, and it would be appealed and that kind of thing. I don't think Craigslist's previous claims were all based on server load, this is why this is getting so interesting, because Greg has found an incredible hack. Correct, Greg?
Well, I wouldn't call it a hack. It's the way the internet works. But yes, we don't have to. The concept of everybody going around scraping each other's computer and putting all this load on it is a ridiculous concept. All data commons are all based on the concept of do it once, do it well, and give it to everybody on an open and equal basis.
How do you make money? How do you charge for the data?
Well, we're not looking to charge for the data now, but down the road, the way like ITA makes money is they charge a licensing fee, and I think it's $2 million a pop for users of that data. I'm not looking to charge $2 million a pop, but people are happy to pay for that. But the basic model is like with any clearinghouse, is you've got to recover your costs and put a normal economic profit margin on top. So people that use 20% of the data are probably going to pick up 20% of the cost plus a profit margin.
Does Google now have an argument against, since you're taking the data from Google's search engines, are they going to sue you and say you're putting an undue load on their servers?
Well, look, I just mentioned Google because everybody knows Google. There's tons of places to get the data. Individuals can download software and do their own little mini scraping and forward the data to a data commons as well. You can crowdsource this data. There's 100 different ways to get this data.
Correct.
I just mentioned Google because everybody just knows what that is. Technology has gotten to that point where the concept of the public domain, it's public and it's in the domain. So it's going to be out there. It's just a question of who's good at putting Jack and Humpty Dumpty back together once it's in the public domain.
Greg Kidd from 3 Taps, thank you for being on the program. It's a really interesting discussion, and I really appreciate your honesty. And, I'm friends with Craig, and I think it's just time now.
Let's get him on.
Well, he won't talk about it 'cause it's a legal issue. They've got a very quirky position, and I think there's a combination of being threatened and feeling like protecting the community. There is a little genuineness to that. But I think that now with so many people with such a good case against him, and it's not hitting his server load, I think he's got to put up the white flag and make peace with people like Greg and say there's an API and here's how to do it properly. You can do it your way. You can use the valet. You can use the public parking, and here's the different options. I think it's time, and it doesn't sound like to me that Greg's going to back down. So that's what I think is going to happen.
And we love Craigslist, and we think those guys are great, and they can come out of this heroes. This is not like a death fight for us. I think that they'll do very well in this new world. There's no reason for them not to.
Right, you're not trying to affect their business model at all or anything like that.
Well, I mean, they're not, but the people who are building competitive services that are more technically adept, are trying to kill Craigslist. So with this data, the freeing of this data means people can make better decisions. Right. To make better products that will eventually tip over and kill Craigslist.
What happens if Greg comes out on top in the?
Oh, then I think it's a real blow to Craigslist. I think Craigslist could start losing.
But not just Craigslist.
No, I think to Craigslist specifically because they're the 800-pound gorilla here.
But
they could lose 10, 20% of their listings every year for 10 years and then go away. Because look at Airbnb created a better service. And Indeed and other job boards have created better services. And so,
are Airbnb? This is a great question for Greg. Is Airbnb information indexed by Google?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay. They want to get more traffic to it. The only person who people are closed when they have. This is the thing about the technology industry. People are closed when they have a monopoly, and they're protectivist, if that's a word, protectionist. They're protectionist when they have the monopoly. So when Google has a monopoly on search results, they're very protectionist about the algorithm, right? They won't tell you the algorithm. But then when they go into Android, everything's so open, and now that Android's getting a big market share, now they're starting to say, well, Android maybe isn't that open. You have to have these certain rules. You have to do this certain flavor. It's not exactly open, right? So people change their position based on their market share. People who tend to be a little hypocritical about it, especially in the Valley.
You could say the same thing about Twitter.
I mean, clearly Twitter was built off the backs of a lot of these developers, and Greg himself, who's an investor, said he would probably run it differently. And I think a lot of people feel that way who are early supporters of Twitter. And obviously, I'm a big supporter of Twitter and friends with these guys.
And
Facebook. I feel slightly different.
And Craigslist.
Not a friend of Facebook. Friends with some people on Facebook. Craigslist, I'm a friend of Craigslist. All right, listen, Greg. Good luck with it. Everybody check out 3taps.com and stay informed of this very important issue. Follow Greg at Greg Kidd, Kidd, on Twitter. Really fascinating discussion, and we're going to be monitoring it, Greg. And thank you for being so honest and open and coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you, GoToMeeting, and thank you to our friends at Stamps.com. Use the promo code TWIST, and when you go to GoToMeeting, use the promo code START. And if you have other ideas for great guests to be on the program, don't email me, please. Just go harass them on Twitter or Facebook. That's the way to do it. Like we're trying to get Kim.com on this
New
program.
model, yeah.
It's a new model.
Yeah.
I want bring me Kim.com. That's my number one get. Not Elon Musk, not Mark Pincus, not Bill Gates. I want Kim.com on this program. That's who I want. Bring me the head of Kim.com. I love that guy. He's insane.
That'd be a great episode.
That's another guy we're talking about legal issues. All right, we'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.